today I'm with Patti Schimizzi. It's Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021. Hi, Patti.
Hi, Glenda.
Thanks for coming and chatting with me about the Squires.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Hope I can
Oh,
give some good information.
This will be fun. We're talking stories, just some storytelling.
Oh, no.
And I do want to start, as I have with the others, when you hear the word Squires, what's the first word or thought that comes into your mind?
I'll probably start crying.
Well,
when I hear Squires, I think of my childhood. I think of growing up in this area. I think of all the people I marched with and all the fun we had and all the traveling, which I think is probably gave me the travel bug, because, we really did a lot of, we got going. We were going places that other people our age were not, we're kind of like from we weren't poverty stricken or anything like that, but working families, they really didn't take time to go on to vacations a lot, and that's how we got to go. When we went to Boston or Lynn rather, because Lynn's outside of Boston, for the World Open the first time, a lot of us had never seen the ocean before. And we stayed on the peninsula of Nahat. I think it was the Knights of Columbus. And oh my gosh, there was kids like sticking their tongues in the water. Is it really salty? That was something else. Where else would I have seen the Rocky Mountains at age 21? And St. Louis Arch on the way out. And we were very fortunate that they also took us places while we were on different trips. Went on an off day. We would go investigate. I know I'm going to jump around a lot.
Oh, that's all right.
So like the first year we went to Denver, we had lunch on the Mississippi. They didn't have to do that for us, but they did. And it was right, I believe, if my memory serves me right, we were right across the river from Hannibal, Missouri, and Mark Twain and all that. So it was just some of the things we did. It was unbelievable, racing up these mountainsides in school buses or racing down the mountainside. And it was that was a thrill. Mr. Edwards was driving the bus I was on, and we were flying down a hill. It was kind of cool. But it wasn't a hill, it was a mountain. But I'm trying to think of where else we happened to see Boston, outside of Boston. We went to, I never heard of Butler, Pennsylvania until I was in the Squires, or Marion, Ohio for that matter. But those were a couple of stops that we made. We went to Kentucky one year to the Bluegrass Invitational, where you practiced either at 6 a.m. till about maybe 11, and the prelims were one night and the finals were the next night because it was so hot.
Okay.
It was and we stayed in dorms. That was a luxury instead of a gym floor. But it was a good time to grow up in Watkins Glen, and it was a great time to be involved with the Squires.
So, speaking about the travel a bit more, Schuyler County is a small county, pretty homogenous as far as culture and diversity. In your travels and in the competitions, you were meeting other kids from all over. How do you think that affected you?
Well, it opened up our world. But what opened up our world even more was when other kids coming from other corps joined the Squires. There started, I believe the first one might have been in 1972, even if it was only from Elmira, and then 1973 it was maybe a couple of more, and then 1974 on. Then you started seeing, kids from Elmira, Corning, Vestal, Syracuse, Pennsylvania, Long Island. I wasn't in the corps, but there was kids from England that came over and marched for the Squires. It was. I'm trying to think of who else, but it was opening the door to all these, different ways of doing things. But they came to the Squires and then learned the Squires way. Every corps doesn't do everything the same way, or they don't, operate the same way. They're basically your end product is the same, but everybody does things differently. And so it was interesting. It was great. They were staying at our homes. We were on these long trips together, and for the most part, I would say it was, you just learned to get along. You learned how to deal with different quirky personalities. There was never a right way and never a wrong way. It was just whatever way. And it taught you how to get along.
And these were teenagers with different experiences
Mm-hmm.
than those here in Schuyler.
Right,
So
right.
I'm sure there were a lot of storytelling going on.
Yeah. It was a very good bunch of people every year. And it just, boy, I tell you, I don't know, I think it made a lot of us, our work ethic fell into it. You had to have a good work ethic to be in drum corps. There's no doubt about it. I mean, who's going to stand out on a football field for 8 to 10 hours a day learning a drill or learning music? And it was just, and I think that served a lot of us as we grew, went into our adulthood and into our career paths or jobs or whatever. It was very good for the foundation, your foundation.
So, some personal notes about you. How old were you when you, and what grade were you in when you joined the Squires?
I just sent this to Judd the other day I joined in May of 1969. I was 13 years old, not quite done with my 7th grade year. I remember my father driving me to practice to the football field, but I don't remember why I joined. I don't remember if my parents wanted me to join. I don't remember if my friends, I know I had friends in it, but I'm not really sure. I can't remember.
Any brothers, sisters who were in?
Yes. No, I was the first one.
Okay.
I was the first one, and then my 2 sisters were in the feeder corps, the Pages. And then Margaret eventually moved up to the Squires in 1973. Lizzie never moved up there, but she went to all the shows with my mother anyway. She was in the Pages.
Mm-hmm.
But I just can't remember why. But I was in drum corps from the age of 13. I took 1969, and I was in it through 1975. For whatever reason, I decided that in 1976 maybe it was time to stop. But I went to every show anyway. I mean, for almost every show anyway. I mean, I was down in Philadelphia to DCI. I'd gone to all the surrounding shows. So why did I not march? Who knows? I mean, I know, but it's neither here nor there. And then in 1977, I had gone to a show in Rochester. I was 21 years old, and I saw the new uniforms, and I said, "That's it. I got to wear those new uniforms." And I marched my last year, so a total of 8 years with 1 year in. So if I would have marched in '76, I would have marched 9 years.
So you took 1 year off?
Yeah, I did, and
Okay.
that was stupid.
Well,
Live and learn.
yeah. And so you were 21 in your last year.
Mm-hmm. And that's
Was that the highest?
That's the
age?
highest you can go.
Okay.
You can't march after 21.
And were you in color guard or?
Well, I first started out, the first couple of years, I was carrying the Corps flag in the American flag line. And I was getting a little bored with that because, to me, I had to do that the first year because I just started late. And I was a little scared. I mean, who wasn't? I mean, at the first practice, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? And then I stuck with the second year. And in the third year, which was 1971, I believe that was the year Hardy came to us as a drill instructor. And I thought, I don't want to stay in the A guard because it's boring. And I don't mean any offense to anybody, but that's where a lot of people do start off in that line. And I certainly didn't want to go in the color guard because I thought, oh my God. So I went in the drum line. And I played cymbals every year except for one, and got talked into playing the triples with 2 other girls, Judy Wickham and Debbie Hull. And then there was one guy, which was Jim Varner, and I played drums at one summer of '73, and promptly went back to the cymbal line after that. But it was fun, we'd have anywhere between, well, I think one year I was in cymbals, it was just me and Lee Holman. And then there were years when there was 4, and there was years when I think there was like 5, and then I think that my last year, I think there was 6 or 7 cymbals that year. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, it was interesting to be in the drum line. It was fun. I enjoyed being in drum line.
So the first year they let girls in, were the girls allowed to go into the drum line and all that?
No.
First it was color guard.
First it was guard.
And then how many years before they let the girls into wherever they wanted to go?
I think it was a couple of years. I think I remember reading just recently that they allowed the girls in the horn line in 1969. And as far as the girls in the drum line, I do believe Debbie Hall was the first girl to go in the drum line. And I went in 71 into the drum line. So I'm thinking, I don't know if she was in the drum line in 1970. I'd have to, that'd be a good question for Judd. I can't remember. I think she was, but I'm not really sure.
Okay.
I think she was, but I'm not really sure. And if not, then maybe it was 71. But I guess I was then considered one of the first girls in the drumline. I never thought about it that way. I just never realized it.
Did the young women have to wear their hair up and hidden? Do you remember that? I'm just curious.
It was kind of tough for those berets. We had to pull it back. There was no jewelry, no makeup. No earrings. Yeah, no earrings, no makeup. No
How
makeup.
interesting.
Yeah, now they're all dolled right up like it was a Broadway
the
production.
boys too. Yeah, so their faces stand out.
Well, no, it was purely military back then. All military. It was just no monkeying around. And then when we got the what does he call those? The ones with the hats, Aussie hats, I think. Your hair was either up or pulled back. You know, you didn't really want it all over the place. I just wanted a nice crisp look. So yeah.
So how did you balance? Did you want to work, and how did you have a job? I mean, and how did you balance that if you did?
Fortunately, my mother always, she was very pro Squires, and I never worked until the summer after I graduated from high school, and I worked at the Navy Recruiter, which is probably one of the most boringest jobs I've ever had in my life. But it did give me the opportunity to get out to go to Squires. I mean, like, no one's walking into the Navy Recruiter and asking for information. I was like just sitting there all day long. But it was through some sort of program that the kids had, get jobs through, because there was not the opportunity in Watkins Glen in the 70s as it was today. These kids can find jobs no matter what.
Yeah.
And so people did try to juggle it. It was a little tough, but by the time I started it that summer, then I would pay for my own tour. But my mother was paying for my tour and my sister's tour prior to that, which was a feat because my mother was a single mom. My dad passed away when I'm the oldest when I was 14 in 1970. So at least he got to see me march in parades one year, and I always tell the story about how marching at the Hector Parade, my father jumping out in the middle of the street and yelling at me, "Hey, Daddy!" I was like, "Oh God," and then I can remember
That's
my uncle
yelling for you, not
yeah,
at
well,
you.
not at me, but for me. And then my uncle used to do it in Corning too, and I'd like, "Oh man, here we go," but and so we were fortunate, and then my mother always opened her house to kids that needed a place to stay. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Tell me about that, what that was like.
Well, I'm going to say that, kids were all over the place. I can remember my brother saying, "Oh my gosh, I almost stepped on somebody coming home the other night," because there was just be bodies all over the living room floor. But we were getting up early, and, kids were just staying everywhere. They, it made more sense to stay the night before. Chances are we had practiced the night before. My mother always made lunches for these kids. I mean, we didn't have much, but she always made sure these kids had something. And it's just everywhere. Of course, I really wish my mother were alive to be able to talk to you about this too, because oh God, she could tell you some stories too. I'm trying to get home from work and I can't get anybody to answer the phone at the house, and it was one year, I think it was in 77 before we left for tour, and they had some people there and from Vestal, and they were nervous because my mother kept saying, "Where is anybody that I live with at my house?" And they'd hang the phone up because they don't like. And of course, I'm probably over at SARS, as is my sister, or wherever she is, And then that bunch is getting their stuff ready at my house, and we lived a half a block from SAR and Aggie's.
Right.
Yeah, so we were one of the popular places to stay. I mean, anybody that was 18 and older. So,
and your mother, of course, who's a wonderful person.
Yeah, she took it all in stride, and she was just one of these parents that loved it. She'd go to the shows, they'd go overnight. One year, my mom drove to Butler, and she had Lizzie with her, and I don't know who else. I can't remember. That's my phone. And, gosh, I can't remember who else was with her. And we talked her into going from Butler to Marion, Ohio, so that we could ride with her. instead of riding the buses. We would jump in people's cars at every opportunity because there was always a caravan going. And but she always had a good time. The parents had the ball. The parents had a ball. And I know Barb probably even talked about that on her interview, how ladies like Aggie Bianco would set up the bar in her room. And when the Squires were at DCI and University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia in 1976, we were there in 75 also, and I marched that year. In 76, I went to watch. And we finally got to the one motel where everybody from Watkins was, because the first night we were in some wacky place downtown that was just awful. With my mother and I and my sister Lizzie, Judy Calhoun, and Mickey Davis. And we got out of there quickly. We found out where everybody else was and went there. And the parents, like, Mom, can we use the car to go get? Yeah, sure. So we're going to get something to eat. They're all having over at Aggie's room having
their own
cocktails, you know. But it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Everything you're talking about says family and community pride. Talk about community pride.
Oh, there was a lot of that. You know, when the Squires started winning, the place would just blow up. You know, like you'll hear about the time we came back from Lynn, and then when we got third place, where we never even expected to be in the finals. And then we came in fifth. They took the top 5 cores. We ended up getting third, and we were just beside ourselves. And then when they had escorted us in, and they had the people at the Lafayette Park, and they did that every time we'd come back, pretty much. And it was a lot of community spirit. We were winning, and it was just great, you know. And the community was completely behind us. As far as I could see, I couldn't see anybody, you know, really complaining. And always there for fundraisers and ice cream socials and things like that. So yes, it was a big deal. It was a very big deal. And while I'm on that subject, with the community and the community pride, youth groups, the arts, and that is why, and I know I don't know if I'm the only one going to say this, but that is why we are so disappointed, and we will continue to keep pushing to try to get the 3 founders into the Schuyler County Hall of Fame, because they deserve it.
And the 3 founders are?
Carl Leslie, Vern Ailing, and Chuck Calhoun.
And you've nominated them before?
Yes, at least twice before. And we are probably the only group that had 50 letters, not just from former members, but parents, people that might not even had kids in the Corps, community people. We had a PowerPoint presentation that Steve narrated. My niece Octavia did it as a project from Keuka College for communications. And I just don't know why not. I mean, you can't tell me that one stupid stipulation of, well, we never put 3 people on one plaque before. This isn't Cooperstown.
Tell me a little bit about those men. No one really has chatted about them yet, but I haven't asked.
Well, you know, I mean, when I first started, all 3 were still very heavily involved. And then as the Squires progressed, I know Vern Ailing did a lot with the pages. Carl stepped away for a while, and then Chuck, of course, stayed in it as much as possible too. But they were, I don't know. I knew Chuck better than, and then Carl better than I did Vern. And then Vern passed away first, and he actually lived next door to the Historical Society. And his son Paul was in it. I don't know if his youngest son was in pages or not. He might have been. I can't remember. But I don't think he went up to the Squires, but he might not have been old enough before, I don't know, the whole thing. And because the Squires, of course, went on, you know, until they completed the 81 season. And all I can say about those 3 guys is that, wow, the fact that they practically, you know, I mean, they had their families, and then they had this hobby of theirs, and the time and effort that they put into this hobby, and of course their own kids were all involved. It was just phenomenal. I mean, you know, what a wonderful thing they did, and how selflessness is the word I guess I want. You know, I mean, it just would never have happened without them.
completely committed to the youth of the county.
Yes, and it was just a wonderful thing. I mean, it just would never have happened if it wasn't for those three.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I'd like to mention that I did, and then in 1978, I did cook for the tour along with another person, all the way to Denver and back. But that was like,
Now, what do you mean cook for?
meaning that they were trying to. Okay, the first year, I know I probably should have. The first year, Dennis did it with Cheryl Powell, who was the wife of the home instructor at the time, Kurt Powell, and Dennis and I were just talking about this the other day, and it was a way to save money. Having, sandwiches for lunch or whatever. And then the next year, and kind of like a lot of it, we blocked out because it was an experiment. It really was. The first year was an experiment. And the second year, I had Jack Callanan and Lloyd Prosperi talked me into cooking because I wasn't marching. And actually, I wasn't.
Were they staying at campgrounds?
The Corps?
Mm-hmm.
No, we stayed in gyms.
So, what do you mean by cooking?
We had a Winnebago they rented, and we had that with all the stuff in it, and then they had a griddle or like a
in the RV.
But the griddle was dragged behind a truck, hooked on I think Dennis's truck, and then that's where we would cook things like you do hamburgers, hot dogs, right in the parking lot
just
or whatever.
Just for your group.
Yes, just for our group.
Well, that does sound experimental.
And then I said, I can't do this alone. So they talked Deanne Barnhart, who is aged out the same year I did, because there was a bunch of us that aged out in 77, and she was formerly, her and her sister and her brother came up from the Grenadiers the year before. And so the two of us had this Winnebago that the Squires rented. And we would have people help us. I mean, we'd kind of like have volunteers, the kids. Hey, who wants to ride with us and make sandwiches for the next 500 miles or whatever it was until we stopped for lunch, And
my, how fun.
Glenda, yeah. When we look back on it, a little bit, it was fun. It was an experience. It was kind of mind numbing at times. I'm telling you. I mean, we'd go pick up donuts at 4 a.m. or go shopping at the Piggly Wiggly. I mean, I never even been in a Piggly Wiggly until this point in my life. And just the really crazy things that would happen, I mean.
Oh, wow.
It was just, oh my God, I don't even know how much I can say about that without, I did write a little thing for Judd's next edition, but I'm trying to think. But we almost made it up Pikes Peak with that Winnebago. We almost made it. And, it's not got a very big engine in those things.
Right.
And we were going up and up and up, and then it seemed like the Winnebago had a mind of its own at this point, and it just turned off into a parking lot because it couldn't go any further.
I'm done.
I said, okay, we'll just stop and see what we can get for souvenirs, then we'll go back downhill. And I didn't really drive it much because the movement would make me sleepy.
Uh-huh.
And I was always like passing out in the front seat, and poor Dee was driving along, and I was just like conked out every minute. And then we'd start recruiting other members to drive it. And then, of course, our most famous story is the time we got stuck under a Burger King. They used to have these overhangs in their drive-thrus.
Yeah.
And we had about 10 kids in the Winnebago, and we're getting our order all situated because that night we ate out. We could eat out too. We tried to not as much as possible, but last night on tour, we're on a Ruby and Watkins the next day. I am not cooking. And so we get all the orders in, and one guy's in the snare line is driving, and boom, we get stuck underneath the overhang. And we're like, oh my God. And the whole court files out of the Burger King and is like looking at us. And so a whole bunch of them get on, there was a ladder on the back, and they're all getting on it, and they're trying to, and we're driving it, and we're going, and we're trying to get out from underneath this underpass. And I was like, oh my God, what are we going to tell Mr. Wickham? So we finally go to wherever we're staying. I don't even remember where the heck we were staying. Well, it must have been Marion. And so here comes Mr. Wickham, and he's a little late. And I'm like, hey, Mr. Wickham, you want to come in and have a beer? Now we're 21, we're 22, yeah. And of course most places 18 anyway. So he comes in, oh my God, I'd love one. So he comes in, I'm going, why were you so late? Oh, so-and-so, I don't know, they either ran out of gas or something. Oh, okay. How about another beer, Mr. Wickham? And, oh, okay, I love it, And then we're sitting there, we're talking. I go, we had a little incident today, and I think you better take a look at the top of the Winnebago. And I think we flattened an antenna or something else up there, but it wasn't as bad as we thought it was. So we were just kind of, whew.
And you didn't damage Burger King?
No, we didn't. I guess they didn't say we did. I don't know. I don't even remember if anybody from the store, if the restaurant came out or not. I can't even remember. All I know is that we needed about 25 hamburgers, and we got those. We got the heck up underneath the overhang. But that was the last night of tour, and we ended it with a bang, so to speak.
I wonder if there are any photos of that incident.
Probably not. I don't know. I don't even remember how many photos. I did take some pictures on that tour, and I got to drag them out, but not a real lot. I mean, I don't really, we didn't have the,
It wasn't like today.
It's not like today. Like, you had the cameras, and then you take your film, and hopefully you had the money to develop it. And then if you spent the money to develop it, how many came out? And it didn't matter how many came out, you still had to pay the full price or whatever. And, and so I don't even know.
That's funny.
It's crazy.
Oh, that's great. So what were some low points? I mean, everything you're talking about, they're fun stories. They make you laugh now, but...
Well, even the low points, I think, make us laugh now. But I'm sure most of the people are going to say who were in at that time was coming in last at States in 1969, when we were dead last. I don't even know what the score was. It was 20 something. I was like, wow. And I was part of that group. And
where was the competition?
Oh, that was in Buffalo.
Okay.
That was in Buffalo, and in order to be eligible for the competition, you had to march in the parade the night before, and the American Legion, that was a big deal. And it was just, the parade was just longer than long. I mean, it was, I don't even know how many miles it was, but it was long, and it was at night, or it was getting into night. And I'm thinking it was in parts of Niagara Falls, but I'm probably wrong. I can't remember. But I know Judd will remember. And then the next day we were, and that's back when they would have inspection before you go off the line, and before you do your performance, and you would have a string hanging that was a tick, or if a hair was out of place, or you had a stain on your uniform, or if you had the wrong color socks. I mean, oh my gosh, and that was nuts. And so luckily, or especially the flags, if the flag had, I know I had some ticks on the flag that I was carrying that year from the Corps flag, and that was a little intense, but that went by the wayside as the years went on. So then, so that was in 1969, and I guess we skipped it a couple of years. We skipped the state competition a couple of years, and I can't remember, but I think we went back did we go back in 71 or 72? And then we shot right up. We didn't, and we did not win it until, I believe, 1975 was then when we won it. So it was 6 years later. We went from dead last to first, and then we won it 4 years in a row. But the year we won it the first time was a feeling I don't even know.
Especially for those of you who'd been there in 69.
Right. They had been there with a long time and finally hit that level. Mm-hmm. It was finally hitting that level. It was awesome. But the low points, I'm trying to think. You were because you're always working for that goal, and there was in 1970 we weren't all that good either, really. Mm-hmm. We had some different instructors, but we didn't start hitting our stride until Hardy came on the scene. Mm-hmm. And then our marching was right out of sight. I mean, we were always in top levels of our marching, but he drilled us.
And his full name?
Hardy Carrasas. I think his first name's Solon, Solon, I believe. Mm-hmm. God, that's awful. I can't even remember. And
was he a paid?
Yes, he was. He was a character. He was a character. Hmm. But it was for our own good, I guess. I mean, he'd probably be arrested if he...
In today's
world. I mean, I don't know if kids would stand getting whacked with a drumstick. I can remember getting whacked in the head with that damn thing. But, because I was probably talking. And imagine that. But, it was, he was a paid... Then they started paying their instructors and our horn instructors. And you know, the guys would come in and different guys would come in and drum instructors and everything, and it just kept building. It was like, kept building, the momentum kept building and building and building, and it was just, I don't even know how to explain it. And it's like that time we won 2 shows in one day, but we didn't know we won the first show. We walked away thinking we were second place, but we had to get out because we had to get to the next show.
Wow.
And then we found out that, that was there was nothing unusual.
Wow.
And then found out later on that we actually won the show, that we left to go to the next show. Or doing 3 parades in one day, that was nothing. And the one in Watkins was never nothing anyway. I mean, that was just down Franklin Street from Captain Bill's at a courthouse or something like that. And that was always a fun one. Montour, Hector, they're always the fun ones. But yeah, you get into Corning and Horseheads, your long ones for the American Legion when they were still doing those. Boy, those were long parades. Or I believe Warren, Pennsylvania was a long one too, and we had to march in that first before we could be in the field competition. You know, they have these stipulations, I guess. And man, they were long days, but you know, we were kids. We were teenagers. We could do it.
Yeah, you could.
You know, you couldn't, you tired? Well, get some sleep, even though we never did, or you ever suck it up, as our parents would say, you could do this. But yeah, but I can't really think of any really low point that would really be a bummer. I mean, at 14 or 15 years old, we thought maybe it was a bad year, but it wasn't.
The end of the world.
It might have been. We thought it was the end of the world, but it really wasn't.
Yeah.
But it was a fantastic experience. I don't know too many people who did not have a fantastic experience. I'm sure are some that might have thought, the practices were too long, or it took up too much time, or whatever. But then they're the ones that might have left after a year or so, They weren't really into
You're the
it.
only one I've heard mention the teens from England.
Can
you talk about that a little more?
I can't because I wasn't there. I wasn't even living here when that happened. I just
All right.
know from the stories from Judd. I knew that from Judd and Dennis. And I don't even know that Dennis would be able to tell you more
Okay.
about that. I had moved to Boston in 79, so I didn't even, and actually I did see the Squires in 79 and I was home, and I walked over to the home show and watched, and then I don't think I saw them in 80, but I met my mother and sister in Montreal. I flew up to Montreal and they drove up and we went to DCI there. And then I was able to see the Squires that year too, and I'm glad I did, because then after that they folded, and that was a fun time.
And what's your interpretation of why they folded?
Again, I don't really know. I think it probably boiled down to money. It boiled down to money, and I think the core membership really was, the kids from the community were in the minority, so maybe I don't know. I'm thinking that maybe it was money. It was getting harder to tour because DCI I think was requiring more touring or whatever, and they might not have been able to do it.
Things were just changing so much from when you were in Squires.
When I was in Squires, and I hope I'm not wrecking this sound because I keep touching these wires.
Right.
That was back when every town had a drum corps. I mean, you could go along. I mean, you would go along the thruway, and off every exit, I swear to God, there was a drum corps. No matter what level, there were drum corps everywhere. The American Legions had drum corps. The Catholic Church had drum corps. Even in this area, there was the Squires, Mark Twain Cadets from Elmira, the Grenadiers from Vestal area, Melodiers from Owego, Sayre, Athens area. There was the ones in Binghamton. There was Geneva Applecrockers, Auburn Purple Lancers, and that is just the ones that I remember from when I started. There was even some before them, like in Hornell and Rochester. Forget it. There must have been, I don't know, 3-4 from Rochester, and then you had the junior level, and then you had the senior level, and Syracuse, and oh my God, they were everywhere. They were everywhere, and little by little, it just started, changing, and people couldn't, and that's when we started seeing people coming from other corps because their corps would fold. They'd come on the Squires, and the Squires were still going strong, and they made us better too. Everybody contributed, but it is sad because New York, the East Coast, oh my, they had so many drum corps. And actually, when I still went to shows. I went to a lot of shows even when I relocated to Boston, because that was another. Massachusetts had a ton of drum corps, and even in the metro area. And I would go to Manning Bowl, up to Lynn, and watch the World Open. Kids would come out and visit. We'd go to the CYO, Catholic Youth Organization show, and the year we all went was at Boston College. So we'd still go. I mean, we still go now. We still go now. Every once in a while, we'll go pick up a show if we, make it into some sort of a long weekend and travel and go see and hang out with people. So yeah, we still get together and go to shows. We haven't been to one in a while, but of course with COVID, nothing happened, and I don't know if we'll be able to go to one this year, but hopefully maybe next year.
Part of your life.
Yes, and it seems to be still an ongoing part of my life. With reunions and things like this exhibit you're doing and stuff like that.
All good.
Yeah, it's all good. And yeah, we're hoping next year to have a reunion. It's kind of been a drag, especially since, Uncle Chuck passed away and everything. So that was pretty much a heartbreaker. So hopefully we will.
Okay. Well, thank you very, very much for sharing your memories.
Thank you.
And your thoughts. Thanks.
Almost caught me a couple of times crying, but that's okay. I sucked it up.
That's okay.